with the November Paris attacks, having just been arrested and apparently injured in a raid by police in Belgium. Catherine Herridge is our chief intelligence correspondent. She has some more information. A very wanted man now bagged. Catherine.
Well, this is no small thing, John, to capture Abdeslam alive. Remember, this was an individual who would have been trained and indoctrinated and prepared to die in that suicide mission in Paris late last year. So this is no small thing to capture him alive. And as intelligence officials often say, dead terrorists can't talk. And you want to take someone alive because in this particular case, you want him to lay out two distinct networks. Number one, the network that made it possible to launch the terrorist attack, how widespread it was, whether there was command and control from Syria, and what kind of support network existed beyond what investigators already have identified in France as well as Belgium. Secondly, and perhaps most importantly, you want him to lay out the network that allowed him to remain under the radar for the last 4 months. What is the extent of sympathizers or ISIS-affiliated individuals in Paris and Belgium? And was he, in fact, as far afield as North Africa after the attacks as had been reported at that time? What I would emphasize, though, based on more than a decade of experience working in this area, is that my contacts always emphasize to me that the interrogation of a suspect can be important, but given the nature of the individual, especially in this case, their statements to investigators always demand a second or third level of corroboration because he would be seen as an unreliable or uncooperative witness. What really is seen as the greatest tool for intelligence gathering is the exploitation of the electronics. So now he's been taken into custody. What kind of electronic hardware will be recovered from that apartment in Molenbeek? Will it include phones? Were these disposables or were they his personal phones? Was he heavily encrypted on those phones? If not, then you're looking at a network of contacts in the area. Where do those contacts take investigators? And then also the computers, because that's the kind of information that cannot be easily manipulated and is often the first choice for investigators in terms of pursuing these initial leads that will follow after his capture today. John. It
was a joint French-Belgian raid, as we understand it, Catherine. I know that the French have a very good reputation when it comes to conducting these kinds of investigations. I assume the Belgians do as well.
Well, good reputation, I think, may be code for hard and aggressive interrogations, if you will, in this particular case. The French and the Belgians have been working very closely to try and unravel the network that was responsible for the Paris attack. Here in Washington just last week, a small group of journalists, myself included, met with a French interior minister who spoke very candidly about the foreign fighter threat that they face in that country and noted for reporters that they had over 600 people in Syria at this time, they believe, affiliated with ISIS. 200 citizens had been killed fighting for ISIS in that country. Another 200 had returned to France, and another 250 were on that way. So you start totaling up the numbers, you're looking at close to 2,000 individuals. But back to the news of today, the capture of one of the primary suspects in the Paris terrorist attacks alive really opens up a whole set of possibilities in terms of the intelligence gathering, one driven by that in-person interrogation, and the second, and perhaps the most immediate, is going to be the exploitation of those electronics, and that allows them to create what they call a link analysis chart. This is the network of the individuals that allowed him to stay under the radar for 4 months so effectively, and then also others identified or linked to the Paris attack itself, John.
And obviously, Catherine, they're going to be looking for chatter in that network. They're going to be looking for the other roaches to sort of scurry out of the woodwork now that they know that their ringleader, if that's in fact what he is, has been captured and is alive and possibly talking.
Well, one of the preferences for intelligence officials is if they have a big capture, to the extent that they can keep that under the radar, they like to see what kind of chatter or discussion happens among operatives once that key figure is absent. That was certainly true with the capture of Khalid Sheikh Mohammed after 9/11. There were several weeks, if not months, as I recall, where the capture was known within the uppermost circles of the U.S. government, the CIA, but not widely known beyond that circle. But it was certainly known to followers within al-Qaeda that he was missing. And when people pop up on the radar like that to discuss an event, that's also another way of, if you will, sort of flushing out individuals who are connected to the network. So in this particular case, it's not possible to do that, but it can still have the effect of generating chatter among those who are connected to or sympathetic to the ISIS cause and the attacks in Paris. But again, a real coup for the French and the Belgians to catch him alive, because this is an individual, I would emphasize, who was part of a complex, multi-dimensional terrorist plot where there was a commitment and an indoctrination with many of the members who were prepared to die for the cause. And in this case, those raiding the apartment would have to be operating on the assumption that he was willing to die rather than be captured, John.
His own brother, Brahim, blew himself up the night of the raids in the night of the horrific attacks in Paris.
That's correct.
Catherine Herridge joining us with some of the late-breaking intelligence. Catherine, our national security correspondent, thank you very much.
You're welcome.